As with other types of animations, you can listen for property animation events by adding listener objects. You do this with implementations of interfaces before you start the animation. First, in this application, Animation Events, I'm going to add a string constant at the top of my activity class. I'll add private, static, final, then the data type string, and I'll name it tag, uppercase, and I'll give it a value of animation events. Now, I'll go down to my onButtonClick method, and I'll add some code here before I call the animator's start method. There are two different kinds of listeners I'm going to demonstrate. The first is called the animator listener. I'll call animator.addListener, and then I'll pass in a new instance of the animator listener interface. Android Studio expands that to include the stubs for the 4 required methods for the 4 events: start, end, cancel, and repeat. I'll add logging for the first event. I'll type in log_i in the onAnimationStart method, and when I press enter or return, that expands to a call to the log.i method. Then I'll do the same thing in the onAnimationEnd method. So now I'm logging those 2 events. I'll run the app. Then I'll select and copy the value of my tag constant, and I'll paste it into the filter box for the logcat output. Then I'll go over to my emulator, and I'll run the animation, and then I'll return to Android Studio, and I'll see that I've successfully logged those 2 events. I'm also going to show you how to use the repeat event. If you define your animation to run more than once, you can listen for the event that occurs as each of the repeating iterations starts. Up here, above the call to add listener, I'll call animator.setRepeatCount, and I'll pass in a value of 2. As we've seen previously, that actually means I'm running the animation 3 times. The original iteration, and then the 2 repeats. Then I'll place the code down here in the onAnimationRepeat method. Once again, I'll call log_i, and now I'm logging the repeat event. I'll go back to the Android monitor window, and I'll clear the logcat output, then run the app again. I'll run the animation. It runs 3 times now. I'll go back, and I'll see that I have a start event, 2 repeat events, and 1 end event. Now, the object that's passed in to these events is an instance of the animator class. And you'll find if you look at the documentation for the class that you can't find out where you are in the animation or the current update value. To do that, you have to use a different kind of listener. So I'm going to add a little bit more code, and I'll do it right up here after I call setRepeatCount and before I call addListener. And this time I'll call animator.addUpdateListener. Once again, I'll pass in an instance of an interface, but this time it'll be called animator_update_listener. And that expands to include the stub for the onAnimationUpdate method. Notice that this time you're not getting an animator, you're getting a value animator. And as we've seen previously, you can examine that object to find out where you are in the animation and what the current value is. So I'm going to call log_i, and then I'll append to that string animation.getAnimatedValue, and that will tell me the current value of the y property as the animation is running. And I'll run the code again. Once again, that runs the animation 3 times because of my repeat count. Then I'll come back and look at my logcat output, and there it is. I'm now seeing the exact value of the y property as the animation progresses, and I can react to it however I want. For example, if I wanted to react by saying, I only want the animation to run until it gets down to halfway down the screen, and then I want to cancel the animation, I could do that in this event code. So that's a look at how to listen for and react to animation events. Again, there are a couple of types of listeners. You won't get all of the events out of just one listener, but all of the information is available to you so you can react to the animations and control them as your app requires.